visceral fat is very different from subcutaneous fat because it doesn't respond to insulin like subcutaneous fat does. In other words, when you have a meal, you eat a carbohydrate meal, and basically your body increases insulin to help take up glucose into your liver, muscle, adipose tissue. Lipolysis shuts down, right? It's like, okay, no longer am I going to break down these fats. It's time to use this energy, right? Visceral fat doesn't respond to insulin, so it just keeps going, right? And these free fatty acids, because they're going right to the liver, it's essentially antagonizing the insulin receptors. So it causes insulin receptors to become more resistant to insulin. And this is part of why people with high visceral fat, by the way, you can gain visceral fat without gaining a pound. So when, obviously the insulin resistance is a problem for many reasons, but it also plays a role in those energy crashes that you experience, right? So, the inflammation that's being generated from this visceral fat constantly making these, pro-inflammatory compounds it's an energy sink, right? So you do constantly feel tired, but also because your cells are becoming insulin resistant, when you have a high glucose meal and you're not responding, the body kind of overcompensates and produces more insulin. And then what happens is your blood glucose goes way low because it was like this overcompensation, right? And then you feel a crash. You feel like this crash, and that signals to the hypothalamus part of the brain. I need energy, right? So then you sort of crave. You get those cravings for those calorically energetic, dense foods. And what's interesting is that you can cause someone to gain visceral fat and their brain can become insulin resistant. So we think a lot about insulin resistance in the muscle, liver. Your brain also can become insulin resistant quite quickly, actually. So insulin is very important in the brain for a lot of reasons, as you know. But, a couple of the things relevant to what we're talking about would be, one is it does act on the hypothalamus and help, tell it to basically stop eating, be satiated. So you're not being satiated, so you eat more, and you're storing the fat more viscerally.